Hello and welcome back. We have another Pauper deck tech in which we're exploring some variants of Beast from the MTG Top 8 website. And what we're going to feature today is more of a mid-range East deck, but still going with the core strategy of, let's say, bouncing off permanents, as the code says. So we call this one the Orzhov Pestilence. I found this is one of the top 8 finishers of one of recently submitted tournament or events on that website, and we are going to see why it's called by that. As you can see here already, we have the Pestilence enchantment card, but how would this kind of let's say a mid-range or a control deck would function in this build? So we have non-creature artifacts, which 8. We have 8 enchantments. We have 22 lands, 2 sorceries with a sweep of Drown in Sorrow. We have 4 instants of Cast Down and 16 creatures. So what would deck would imply initially, as you can see here, is a lot of creatures that goes with bouncing off their cards. So we have copies of Glint Hawk that can bounce an artifact you control. Also, of course, Skyfisher that can bounce a permanent you control to its owner's hand. Also gives you a flyer threat. At the same time, we have a lot of cards that say that goes with the ETB effects, such as this one. We have Inspiring Overseer. It gains you 1 life and draws a card. Also with that of 4 copies of Traveling Inspector that also gets you to investigate or create a clue token. At the same time, you can see here that these artifacts can also be beneficial if they get to return to your owner's hand. So one of these is these 4 copies of the Spare Supplies. It enters the battlefield tab. At the same time, it gets you to draw a card, and when you pay 2 to sacrifice it, or pay 2 tap to sacrifice, you will also draw a card. But the first purpose here is that you can also have this one as a bounce target, and which you can later on be able for you to draw another card for more value. Another of which that can also be beneficial in this deck is the 4 copies of Titan Blade. So this new copy, which is a common from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, functions as an edit effect. As it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. And more so, as you bounce this artifact, you can also get an additional value from it. And later on, you can pay 5 to craft it with a creature, wherein it will become a Consuming Sepulture, in which this artifact can also sort of drain life effect. At the mere upkeep, each opponent loses 1 life and you will gain 1 life. So that way, you can have this one as more of a slow win condition in this kind of build, because you can see here that it's more of a controlish effect. So having those one as a drain effect and also combining it with the Pestilence can also get you to win your games. So Pestilence here is a 4 to cast enchantment in which you can pay black, deals 1 damage to each creature and player. At the end of each turn, if no creatures are in play, sacrifice Pestilence. So what goes the combo with this card is that you can have this copy of this creature, these 4 copies of the Guardian of the Guild Pack. So since this is just a 2/3 protection from monocolored, which means that monocolored damage sources can be prevented by this creature. So having this one and Pestilence in play, basically having you defined or a setup wherein you cannot basically lose Pestilence, because Guardian of the Guild Pack will still live through that black source of damage. So this black source of damage is still a monocolored card, which is the Pestilence enchantment. And so it also combined with several enchantments here. We have 2 copies of Omen of the Dead that can also return a card from your graveyard to your hand that is a creature card, and also become a good bounce target. We have also 3 copies of Journey to Nowhere, in which this card would also get to exile a creature. At the same time, if they need to have this one bounce for another better target from your opponent's creatures, you can just have this one returned by the core Skyfisher. And additionally, with the support of this sort of a mid-range, or I think this is more of a controlish damage dealing with the Pestilence winning for this kind of strategy, are your spot removals and mass removals. That is 2 Drown in Sorrow main deck, and also 4 copies of Cast Down as your efficient spot removal. With the setup of 22 lands, you can see here just basically having to fix your mana and also some utility in the form of Bojuka Bog that can extra graveyards, Jabiria Crossroad that can also gain you 2 life, which is also a good bounce target as well as this one, and some of the gain life effects with the Scour Barrens, Severe Cure Campus that can also be used to scry 1, that's only 1 copy, as well as the mana fix of Orzhov Basilica, which is a bounce land in itself that can produce 2 mana, and several basic lands with plains and swamp. Now for the quick check of the sideboard, I think this is also going well with having the matchups of control, other aggro decks, anti-artifacts, and also anti-graveyard. So we have 2 copies of Duress, maybe for discarding for the Dimir control matchups. We have 2 copies of Honorable Scout. This is, I think, for the black and red creatures. That means that token-based or black-based aggro can also be good for this one, as it just comes to play to gain 2 life for each of those creatures target opponent controls. 2 copies of Nihil Spellbomb. This would also act as a graveyard removal. At the same time, you can pay black, which means you can also have a good cantrip on this. 2 copies of Lone Missionary. This is also another life gain source, and also having a 2/1 body to also attack or maybe trade with your opponent's early creatures. 3 copies of Revoke Existence. This is also good for the affinity matchup where you can just exile target artifact or enchantment. A copy of Suffocating Fumes, basically for the token matchups or any Winnie aggro decks that you can face for your opponent. And I think the copy of additional for the Pestilence would also go with the matchups that also rely more on having those creatures that are maybe resilient in damage. So we need to set up your Pestilence combo early on for your cards to suffice on that. And last but not the least are the 2 copies of Ukibagang Shinobi. This is more like a discard effect because you can ninjutsu any of your creatures, especially those that are flyers that can be blocked, and then with it deals combat damage to a player. That player discards 2 cards. So in any way, against mid-range or under control deck matchups, you can have this one as an efficient 4-drop in a way that can also have your opponent discard 2 cards. Any relevant removals or spot removals can also be discarded or be dealt with by this creature. And your last but not the least are your mana value. The mana curve is surprisingly low with just 2.26, but you can see here that you can still go with the long game, having Pestilence in play and also a good mana sink for your extra mana that can also deal damage to your opponent. Color distribution is even. This is price also. We have 24 black, white is 19, and white producers is both 15 in this total lands of 22. And your tokens just basically having a clue token for the Traveling Inspector that can be produced also. So I guess that's pretty much it for this kind of deck. I think this is also, let's say, a tier 2 or a tier 1.5 kind of deck archetype in the current Pauper Legacy format. If you have faced this one in your daily grinds for the Pauper, let me know in the comments below, as we can have a good discussion as to why these cards would be chosen, or we can also have some modifications if needed, basing on some metagame call in your local game store, or maybe for your MTG online daily grinds and tournaments and events. So I guess that's pretty much it for this deck, Orzhov Pestilence for your Legacy Pauper deck tech. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and also notifications on, as we can still have more of this kind of discussions. Pauper format would still be a good kind of format to play and grind for the long game, in the long term kind of deck tech that we can use for our enjoyment for this Magic the Gathering TCG. Again guys, thank you for checking this one, thank you for watching, and see you on the next video.